Welcome, everyone. This is episode 7 of Debt Stories, real people beating debt and winning financially. Today, we'll meet Jennifer, a born and raised Chicagoan in her late 20s whose budgeting philosophy boils down to, you've got to live a little. For most of us, the living part is easy. It's that little part that can get us into trouble. So, let's dive in and hear how Jennifer went from dropping cash on every gadget that crossed her path to earning the nickname the Queen of Cheap, a title lovingly bestowed upon her by a cousin after she started budgeting. Not that Jennifer minds. As of this interview, she's paid off all of her student loans and most of her credit card debt and purchased her very first home in Chicago.
Yeah, I closed on the house in December. So I got it at the end of 2016, still trying to navigate and figure things out in terms of like what month to month can be like. But I think I have a decent handle on things for now. I work as an IT analyst for a hospitality company. I've been doing IT work for the last 7 years. My mom lives with me. I'm single, so it's just myself and her, and we have a townhome.
Jennifer's still feeling out the true costs of her new home.
The property tax was just raised twice this year, so it's pretty expensive. The tricky part is I bought new construction, so you don't even know the actual property tax until your bill comes out in 2018 for this year's tax.
Homeownership in Chicago proper is relatively expensive, and apparently streamed TV is too.
Cost of living is actually pretty high. We have pretty high taxes. We have strange taxes that probably other places in the country doesn't have. We have a tax on Netflix and Hulu. So instead of saying $7.99 like everybody else, I actually pay $8.70.
Living in a high-cost city doesn't help if you've got money worries, of course, but that's not where Jennifer's debt story began.
It kind of started when I was in college. You go to the fairs and you see someone offer you, hey, here's an ice cream and a t-shirt. And you're like, oh, what do I have to do? Sign your name on a dotted line, get a credit card. So then I joined a sorority. So you just keep spending and spending and spending. So when you graduated and I sat down and looked at my debt, it was like, I don't want to look at that, out of sight, out of mind. So I just kept spending. And then it ended up one day really sitting down and looking at my debts. I plugged things into Mint and I saw that my net worth was like, I want to say 40 grand in the hole. And that's including student loan, credit card debts. And then you're like, okay, so what do I do?
For Jennifer, like with so many people who realize they're in deep, the answer wasn't clear. Facing $40,000 of debt can be a bit overwhelming, especially in your mid-20s.
That was like my first attempt to trying to get myself on track. I mean, I just saw the app Mint. I was like, oh yeah, let's just plug it in and see how things go and see how it works out. There was no serious attempt to try to get anything down.
She had the cold, hard numbers, but what Jennifer really wanted was a plan to pay it all off. Instead, she decided to do what all of her friends seemed to be doing, buy a house. Flashback to 2013.
I think the first like real hit home call was when I'm going through the numbers with the banker about buying homes, and she's like, I can't approve you for your loan. And that kind of knocks you flat.
Ouch.
The second thing that got me to really sit down and really think about everything was my company announced that they were closing our division down. So then it's like, you have no emergency fund, you're thinking of buying a house, and you're still in debt. You're like, all right, now it's like, it's getting serious.
Getting declined for the home loan and possible job loss were stressful, but not nearly as worrisome as what happened next.
The final thing that got me to really sit down and figure out my situation was my mom had to have open heart surgery. So I was home one night and just kind of as I'm driving back from the hospital, and my mom's like, she's recovering, but it's still like a long road recovery ahead of her. So we're trying to help her. And then
the realization that she needed to be there for her mom was the final straw. Jennifer knew it was time to get out of debt and whip her finances into shape. So she started Googling.
And I sat down and I was like, budget apps. So then I came across You Need a Budget. I think I signed up for the trial, and I really like started watching the videos. And it was like, this was the time where actually like I tried it, and it actually, I stayed through with it from 2015 till now. So it's been almost 2 years. Really, that was the night I sat down, punched everything in. Let's attack this. Let's come with a game plan, a strategy, and how do you undo this? Because if you're going to get a house, if you plan on getting a house, this is the way to go. No one can say like you're rejected. There's been embarrassing situations in the years prior to that you try to get a credit card and they actually said your credit score out loud, and you're like, oh, that's embarrassing.
Today, Jennifer has nothing to be embarrassed about. What a 180.
I paid off all of my student loans, and I owed $28,000. I paid off my credit card debts. Actually, I was, slowly making the payments, but then I'm looking at my debts. I'm like, why isn't that going down? I had some money saved aside, and I actually took all my debts and basically ranked them by interest rate, and then attacked the highest interest rate first while still paying the minimum. It was hard, but I had to tell myself short-term pain, long-term gain.
Jennifer scrutinized her lifestyle and cut back in meaningful, doable ways, and her work didn't go unnoticed.
I realized I ate out almost $500, $600, and then 1 month was $1,000, and I don't even remember eating out that much that month. I really cut back on eating out. I would actually drive my car to work every day and pay, I want to say $20 a day to park my car. So I stopped doing that, and I stopped just buying random like electronics if anything fancier. So I literally had cut myself off to the point where some family members were actually like, are you okay? Because they didn't know about my they didn't know about my debt thing. So now they see a 180 of like the person who can't seem to stop spending has basically been, as my cousin calls me, queen of the cheap. And she was like, okay, you don't do this, you don't do that. And she's like, you're always looking for deals and bargains now. Like, what's going on? I explained to her what I was doing. She's like, you got to live a little. I was like, yeah, I can live a little, but I know my limits now. I think the biggest thing I've learned during this whole process is that since I never gave myself boundaries, I just kind of went all over the place, and that didn't help. It just increased my debt. You look at your numbers, you look at everything, you're like, oh my God, what do I do?
Everyone wants to live a little, but live a little and live without limits at all, those are very, very different things. And as it turns out, setting those limits helped Jennifer get more enjoyment from her spending.
When I moved to my new townhome, it really drove up another point home was that I spent a lot of my money on material things, but I never spent it on experiences. I was throwing away things like I didn't even realize, why did you buy this? Why did you get this? Why did you have 4 copies of the same movie? I'm like, why do I have this movie running around? And realized that, material things don't go with you. If, one day you leave this world, unique experiences are the ones that you take forever. No one can take away from you. I'm going on vacation now. I get to see the world. That's what that really drove home for me. The best trip I went on was I went to Toronto last year. It's amazing. The more I plan for it, I have to look at, okay, how much are plane tickets? It forces me to sit down and evaluate, okay, what's my budget? What I have to spend on this versus before I was just like, okay, I walk in the store. Oh, I can buy this new iPhone. It forces me to make sure I live within my means. I find myself sometimes wanting to buy something, but I always catch myself in time.
Now when Jennifer turns to her credit card, she's in control.
I do have a balance, but the balance always paid in full by the due date.
And her friends and family are impressed.
When I told people that I eliminated my student loan, they were like, oh my God, how did you do it? They see my application of discipline.
So, what helped her stay the course?
The reason I was able to stay on track as long as I have is just really making sure I was well within my means. And there's no perfect month. Like if someone says I had the perfect budgeted month, they're lying, because it's impossible. I did seek out a financial advisor halfway through it to make sure like I'm not going crazy here. I think that was actually money not well spent, because it was everything he told me I already knew.
Jennifer also listens to podcasts and reads to keep herself motivated.
I think just like really diving deep into the personal finance and really listening to different podcasts, trying to keep myself motivated and challenging myself. Like I didn't want to slip. That was the one thing. Like I did not want to go back into debt, because my biggest fear is if I slip this time, I think that was it. Some of the podcasts I like was, one of them was Stacking Benjamin, was pretty good. It helped me with learning about investing. YNAB, I listened to you some in the morning. The book I think that got to me is Jason Vertug. He released a book last year, You Only Live Once. That really helped kind of reinforce some things. It's about balancing, because you can't just go 100% in. You kind of have to find what works for you. That's the one thing that really helped.
The key to living within her budget has been allowing herself some fun money. We all need some, and Jennifer watches herself closely on this front.
Sometimes I get close to the border where it's like, okay, you're kind of cutting it close this month with entertainment. But so that's my guilty pleasure. Like I still sometimes like make sure I have fun a little bit, but I do it in moderation instead of in excess, where I was going out a lot just to, hang out with friends and stuff. That's kind of one of those things where, okay, it's still my guilty pleasure, no, non-negotiable, but hey, you got to live a little.
There it is. You've got to live a little. Wise words. Jennifer also shared this.
And I think the biggest thing that kept me from achieving my goals earlier was the truth was in front of me for many years, and I wasn't honest with myself. And this whole debt journey process, I learned a lot about myself, I think, because I had to face things head on, even when I didn't want to. It's the same thing as Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, is to know thy enemy is to know thyself, right? To know your debt is to understand, like, how are you as a person? How are you, what are things that, are your vices and that are your weaknesses and your weak points?
Interesting. If you know your debt, you know yourself. Money truly is a magnifying glass for our inclinations. It really does accentuate what you already are, most of the time. If you're struggling with money, Jennifer stresses the importance of taking it one day or $1 at a time.
Be realistic. There'll be months where you have to choose between certain things. It's just can't be too hard to yourself.